We've got about another minute, so we'll wait a little bit longer, let a few more folks log in. So we're getting close.
Kim, I should mention that I'll watch the chat, and when you are uh, completed with your presentation, I'll circle back and share those questions with you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
It appears it's about 12 noon, and to respect the time of folks as they've logged in and ready to get our session started, I think I'll begin with some opening comments. I'm Paula Urick. I'm a co-chair of the Lunch and Learn Committee, and I welcome you to the December 2025 program of the League of Women Voters Lunch and Learn. For those of you on the Zoom call, please mute your audio and turn off your video so we can focus on our speaker. We use the chat function for questions, so please type your remarks there. We will monitor the chat and relay questions to our speakers. In case you didn't know, for over 100 years, the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, has encouraged informed and active participation in government, worked to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. Membership is open to all. For further information, go to www.lincolnleague.org. League of Women Voters, Lincoln-Lancaster County is proudly nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government. Videos of previous Lunch and Learns are available on the League's website. Again, lincolnleague.org. So I'm going to hand over the microphone per se to Judy Kelly, who will be introducing our speaker.
Thank you, Paula. As a member of the Lunch and Learn Committee, I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker. Kim Morrow is Chief Sustainability Officer of the City of Lincoln, where she's leading the transition to a climate-smart and equitable future. As architect of the city's 2021 Climate Action Plan, she leads cross-sector teams advancing its 118 initiatives across 8 sectors. Kim will tell us more about her work in Lincoln, so I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Kim. She has been working to address climate change for more than 15 years in consulting, nonprofits, higher education, and faith-based organizations. In 2015, she was honored at the Obama White House as a champion of change for her work with faith communities. She also serves on the boards of the District Energy Corporation, the Nature Conservancy Nebraska, and the Midwest Climate Collaborative. Kim holds a BA of the University of California, Santa Cruz, a Master of Divinity from Pacific School of Religion, and a certificate in sustainability and behavior change from the University of California, San Diego. Clearly a California transplant to Nebraska, Kim and her husband make their home in Lincoln and are the parents of 3 grown children between them. Kim?
Thank you so much, Judy, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm so delighted to join you all this afternoon. I wanted to pass on holiday greetings from the mayor herself, Mayor Gaylor Baird. I mentioned this morning that I would be speaking to you over the noon hour, and she wanted me to make sure that I sent you her holiday tidings to all of you. I have been aware of the work that you all do for a number of years. I was telling Judy that I worked with some volunteers from the League about 10 years ago when I was doing clean energy advocacy, and became very impressed with the detailed and focused work that the League does. So thank you so much for everything you're doing to advance clean and equitable and sustainable solutions in our state. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and jump into telling you a little bit about what's going on with Lincoln's Climate Action Plan. Give me a moment to orient here. Get this going on full screen. There we go. Okay. So to start with, I'd like to invite you to take a little journey with me into the future. And I'd like you to imagine that it's August of 2050, and there's a music festival that's about to start on the corner of 14th and O Street downtown in our new music district. People are arriving by electric shuttle, by bike, by bus, and you can smell the aromas of food that comes from all over the world. You can also hear the music from all over the world, like Tibetan drumming or Sudanese melodies. And that makes sense because by 2050, 1 in 3 residents of Lincoln is a person of color. It's been a scorching hot summer here in August of 2050. There's been over 31 days over 90 degrees. But the city of Lincoln is thriving because we have cooling centers that have opened across town. There's a drought that has gripped the region, but now we have a new water source that is a line that goes directly from the Missouri River to Lincoln. So our water security is strong and people are thriving. Lincoln Electric System in this scenario of August 2050 is now running entirely on renewable energy. We have green jobs that come from a green energy plant that we have locally here. And the workers at the green energy plant have been trained by the collaborative training program we have with Southeast Community College and our high schools and the University of Nebraska. We have an indoor public market that is open year-round where residents can browse locally grown produce and local food products. And that indoor market also functions as a cooling center when we need it. So the music festival begins to start, these musicians start to play, and for a moment you can feel the sense that we are really living the good life. So this vision of 2050 is not just a dream, it's actually a roadmap to a future where our whole community is thriving on a healthy planet. It's a future in which the climate has indeed changed, as you probably noticed from what I described, but we have learned to thrive in spite of it. And this notion is actually the essence of our Resilient Lincoln initiative. This is what we call our work to implement the climate action plan that we adopted in 2021. So how is climate change affecting Lincoln? As Nebraskans, we know extreme weather, right? But we also know that what's changing are the trends. On average, our winters are about 2 degrees warmer than they were in the 20th century. And our fall seasons are actually warming more rapidly than any other season. Lincoln has set 3 new record warm months since the year 2000. We've all experienced bitter cold spells in recent years, kind of like today, but we've had a couple of spells of 3 days or so where we've had below 0 temperatures. We've also had some high wind events, which have significantly impacted our community's tree canopy. Water, as you can see in these 2 photos, water is at the heart of our challenges. Sometimes we have too much water, like in the photo on the right, that's from the flooding event that we had in 2015. And sometimes we have not enough water. We've had increasing instances of droughts. In 2019, you might remember that Nebraska experienced what's called a bomb cyclone event. And that event knocked out power to our pumps at our well field in Ashland, where we get all of our water currently comes from the Platte River in Ashland. But the electricity was cut to those pumps, which meant that the water could not make it here to Lincoln. And we narrowly avoided a water emergency at that time in 2019. So that event, plus the climate action plan, was really a wake-up call that we needed to start a comprehensive effort to secure a second water source for the Lincoln community. When Mayor Gaylor Baird came into office, she appointed a community group to tackle that precise question. And they ended up making a recommendation to build a new line all the way to the Missouri River. And we have now started work on that. It's going to be a multi-year process to get that underway, but that's one example of what we're doing to improve our climate resilience. So today I'd like to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing to make our community more resilient, and also how we're working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and how you can be a part of it. So at City Hall, we are working on actively building a Lincoln that is connected, healthy, and resilient. And our goal is ultimately that sustainability is simply part of the fabric of how we all live, not some special, unique initiative that we undertake. So in 2021, we adopted our climate action plan, and the plan sets two high-level goals. One is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2011, or 80% by 2050 relative to 2011 levels. And speaking of our greenhouse gas emissions, here's a little more detail on that. Here is where our greenhouse gas emissions come from. You can see that nearly 50% of our emissions come from the electricity sector. And then the second largest sector is transportation. That would be the tailpipe emissions from all of our cars and trucks. Third largest is natural gas. And then finally, waste is a small percentage. But the good news is that Lincoln's greenhouse gas emissions are already declining. They have actually declined 20% since 2011. So we're off to a good start, but we do have a long way to go. I will note that most of the reductions that you see there came about from LES, or Lincoln Electric System, making investments in renewable energy. So they've been a really strong partner in our progress, and we expect that to continue. But as you may know, reducing emissions is only half the equation. Resilience is the other half. So our number one priority at City Hall is protecting the health and safety of our residents. And we know that extreme heat is actually one of the most deadly climate impacts. And so one of the things that we did this year that we're really proud of is we developed a proactive heat response plan with the Lincoln-Lancaster County Health Department. And this was a really interesting process that brought together dozens of community agencies to do scenario planning, to understand how each of these agencies interact with our residents during extreme heat events, how we even determine what is a heat event or a heat emergency. And through that process, what we ended up doing is establishing common thresholds, paired with some of these definitions you see on screen that come from the National Weather Service of when we are in an extreme heat watch or an extreme heat warning. But now we have commonly adopted thresholds that when we meet them, it triggers a coordinated community response to, for example, open our cooling centers, some of which are libraries or community centers. We extend the hours of those centers. We provide water and a heat kit sort of thing that we gave out free to residents. And so we were able to put this plan into place this summer. We did have some extreme heat days, and it worked really well. And we'll continue to iterate every season that we learn to improve for the next year. And not only are we working on heat, but now that this plan is complete, the health department has begun working on an extreme cold plan. So we are tackling helping our residents be better prepared and supported during extreme temperature events. That will also include floods, droughts, and storms. So we're working seriously on improving our climate resilience. So back to the Climate Action Plan. The Climate Action Plan has 8 areas of action, which you see here. And they're all really important in their own right. But today I'm just going to focus on 3 of the 8, which is local food, energy, and transportation. So let's start with local food. Some people think of farmers markets when we talk about local food, and they think of sort of expensive, local food for wealthy people. But it's actually about much more than that. It's about businesses. It's about public health. It's about access to nutritious food for low-income folks and children and elderly folks. And it's also about building community. So right now, 90% of the food we consume in Lincoln comes from outside the United States. And the average bite of food actually travels over 1,300 miles to get to our plate. On top of that, our grocery stores only stock about a 3-day supply of inventory. And that means that we are vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. You might remember during COVID when there was suddenly a shortage of toilet paper, or there were suddenly shortages of other things. More recently, there were shortages of eggs because there was the avian bird flu outbreak. So we've seen some examples of how these supply chain disruptions and shortages can impact our grocery stores and lead to empty shelves. And it is a vulnerability that we have with our national, it's called the just-in-time delivery method. So in addition to that, one definition about what do we mean when we mean local food. Local food generally refers to food that's grown within a 250-mile radius of where you live. It's not a hard and fast definition because you can see in this circle here that that would exclude Western Nebraska, but we want to include Western Nebraska. So for example, if we want to serve local meats, from our Western Nebraska ranches, those would certainly be considered local food. But that's just a general working definition that we use. Lincoln residents spend $1.3 billion on food each year that is most of which is sourced from outside of Lincoln. And there was recently an analysis that was done that found that if each Lincoln metro area resident purchased just $5 worth of food each week directly from a local farm, it would boost farm income by $91 million. And then, of course, there are other benefits. Locally grown food is fresher, it's more nutritious, it's tastier, and it also gives us a sense of pride. You know, there's obviously an irony that we are one of the most important agricultural states in the country, and yet we don't grow very much edible food in this state. But we still have that proud agricultural heritage. A lot of people grow, vegetables in their backyard gardens, and we love to eat food that's been grown locally. We have amazing soils here. And so it helps to grow that sense of pride in our local ecosphere and local community when we can grow our own food. So one interesting program that we started this year was, let's see if my slide advances, there we go, was the Mayor's Local Food Challenge. And this was a program that invited Lincoln's businesses, schools, institutions, restaurants, and other organizations to source local food in their cafeterias or employee subscription boxes. And we just finished out our first year. It ran for 6 months from July to October. And we were really thrilled with the outcome. We had 21 institutions participate. They purchased food through a distributor, which made it really easy for them to place orders. But they actually were sourcing food from 38 farmers or suppliers. We generated nearly $600,000 in economic impact, and that constituted 289 orders. So we're really happy about the outcome there, and we will run the challenge again next spring. So if you are connected to, or next spring and summer, if you are connected to an organization that serves food or would like to provide food in the form of subscription boxes to your employees, please contact us and we'll get you on the list. Here is a list of some other great things we have going on in our local food work. Some of these are being done by the city and some are being done by our partners. We have a great, it's called the Mayor's Community Committee on Local Food that includes a lot of our key local food stakeholders, and they're doing wonderful work. I just want to highlight one of these for you, which is our new urban garden policy that passed this spring, and it was technically it was a zoning code change. But what it means is that you can now sell produce grown in your own backyard at your property. So it's kind of like, think of having a garage sale. You can do that with produce that you grow in your own garden. Or you could walk down the street and buy some produce that your neighbor has grown in their garden. So we're really excited. It's kind of like a microeconomic development initiative, and also just a way to encourage more growth of local food. So we're excited about everything that we're doing in this area, and we hope that you'll get involved by purchasing local food wherever you can, or growing your own food if you like to do that. And also importantly, supporting the Lincoln Food Bank. Especially recently, you probably heard about the pause in SNAP benefit funding. The Lincoln Food Bank does amazing work at providing nutritious food to the people who are most vulnerable in our community. And so we definitely want to direct support their way. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about energy. And to start us off, I'm going to mix things up a little bit and give you a quiz. And I'll invite you to put your answer, what you think the answer is, in the chat. So the first one is, what percentage of Lincoln Electric System's electricity comes from renewable sources?
What do you want
Do
to
you
put?
think it's 9%, 35, 45, or 75%?
What is it, Becky?
Comes from renewables.
Yeah, 35, 45.
It's supposed to be 45, but not from the Southwest.
So yes, feel free to put your answer in the chat, and we will take a look. Let's see if I can bring up the chat. I'm gonna, I can't see my own chat. Hold on one second. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we've got 35, 45, 35. Okay. Thank you for your answers. The correct answer is 35%. So LES has made investments in wind, solar, and hydropower over the last 15 years, so that about over 1/3 of their generation resources are now renewable. And at the same time, they have actually reduced CO2 emissions by 46% over the same period of time. So they have made great progress. We want to continue making important progress, but it's good to acknowledge how much progress they have made so far. Okay, second question. Which of these initiatives is part of Lincoln's strategy to enhance energy resilience? Community microgrid, battery storage, wind farms, or all of the above? And again, you can put your answer in the chat. Seeing some D's, all of the above. More D's. Okay, I guess that was easy. You're correct. All of the above is right. LES has created a community microgrid, which could come into play as a backup source of power if we had a community-wide power outage. This downtown microgrid could still be activated, and that means that the arena would have power, this building, the city county building would have power, and everything in that kind of downtown area that includes a lot of key facilities, and would also include like if the arena were being used as an evacuation center, we'd have power there. And LES is in the process of installing a 3 MW battery storage system that will also be connected to this microgrid. So it's an important new way that we're providing energy resilience to our system. And the battery storage system is also giving LES the chance to sort of experiment or get some experience with battery storage systems and see how they could optimize those for their system more in the future. And then, of course, LES also has a lot of wind energy in their portfolio already. Okay, third and final quiz question. It is estimated that data centers consumed about 4.4% of the nation's electricity in 2023. What do you think that percentage is estimated to be by 2028? 8.3, 12, 29, or 42? Connor has a very specific guess, 6.7 to 12%. Sounds like Connor might know something about this. A lot of people are guessing 29%, 12, 12. Okay, the correct answer, yes, is 12%. Sometimes people think that, data centers are going to consume, 75% of our energy, but they are growing at a very rapid pace, but it's estimated to be 12%. Data centers are among the most energy intensive types of buildings. They consume about 10 to 50 times the energy of a commercial office building. And the enormous needs of artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency mining are leading a lot of utilities to add more energy. And unfortunately, a lot of the energy that's being added right now is natural gas. So we are at a sort of difficult moment in history, I feel. I also feel it's temporary, I'm hoping, in the sense that I believe that in the future we will figure out some non-emitting energy sources that will help us power this AI revolution that seems to be taking off faster than we may want to. Okay, thank you for your answers and your participation. So I want to give a shout out to Lincoln Electric System. I'm assuming, well, I actually don't know if most of the people on this call live in Lincoln, but for those who do, I feel that we're really fortunate to have LES as our public power provider. As you may know, you probably know, Nebraska is the only state that has 100% public power, and this is such a resource and strength that we have. We have some of the lowest electricity rates in the country. And LES does have a goal to be fully decarbonized by 2040. I already mentioned they've reduced their emissions 46% since 2010. Energy consumption is the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And so it's important that we keep our focus on emissions that are associated with energy, which LES is doing and which the LES board is really focused on too. And part of the reason we're lucky to have LES is they really do have a commitment to serving this community in a way that investor-owned utilities do not. So, and the mayor and I work very closely with LES all the time. So just to say a word about some of the intense storms that we have been having. These are just, as you can see, in the last 2 years.
Hoots.
In August of, let's see, these are not in chronological order. Sorry about that. In July 31st of 2024, we had 83 mile an hour straight winds. In August of 25, just this year, recently, we had 91 mile an hour winds. And in March of last year, or March of this year, we had 74 mile an hour winds with 2 inches of icing. So in some of these storms, like in the August of 2025 storm, there were about 35,000 residents who lost power. LES had to bring in 22 crew members from other utilities. There was extensive tree damage that interfered with utility lines. And their recovery was made all the more difficult because it was really hot and humid weather, and then it rained again. And so the line workers were working in really difficult conditions. It took about 4 days to restore power to all the customers. For me personally, the July 31st storm was the scariest. I was driving home from work at the time, and I don't think any of us knew that storm was coming. It seemed to just pick up on a dime. And I found myself in a really precarious situation driving through neighborhoods with some of these big, tall oak trees. And I thought it might be the end of my life if one of those trees fell on my car. The power went out at our house. We were actually one of the very last houses to get our power back on. We lost power for 4 days. And it was just a reminder of how disruptive that is to lose electricity. Of course, it spoils all your food. We have a well on our property, so we couldn't get running water because we couldn't power the pump, which meant we couldn't flush toilets. Obviously, we couldn't charge our phones. I have an electric car. I couldn't charge my car. Couldn't sleep because it was too hot. So it's just on and on. You really start to understand the knock-on effects that power outages have. So it's really difficult and sad that these intense storms keep happening, and it's heartbreaking, I know, to so many of us to see the damage that these storms do to our beloved tree canopy. At the same time, I feel like we as a community are getting practice at being more resilient and recovering more quickly from these storms. And LAS is working on a long-term plan to bury more power lines so that we are more resilient the more time goes on. So resilience is about designing a system that bounces back quickly and keeps those critical services running during storms, heat waves, supply chain disruptions. And that's what our strategy aims to do. But resilience is also the ability to learn how to adapt to a continually changing environment. So I feel like that's what we're doing. We are not only learning how to bounce back, but we're learning how to keep adapting to the changes in our climate. I also want to say that the city and LES are embracing innovation in this work. I mentioned the 3 megawatt zinc battery that is going in now. That is a great new technology that we're able to experiment with here in Lincoln. And the city is also working on energy efficiency in our municipal buildings. One of the important things we did this year was to complete the first ever municipal building energy management plan for Lincoln and Lancaster County. We did this through a $300,000 federal grant that we received from the Department of Energy. And this allowed us to analyze our municipal building square footage to calculate our energy intensity, energy usage intensity across all of our buildings, and then also to create a dashboard that is going to help us monitor our energy usage going forward, which then is going to help us obviously improve our energy efficiency. So we're excited about some of these things that we're doing. And there's also a lot of opportunities that you can get involved in if you're not already. Let's say you're a homeowner. There's a couple of things you might consider. Maybe you have been thinking about putting solar panels on your roof, but you're not sure if your roof gets enough sun to make it worthwhile. LES can actually help you figure that out and help you make the best decision for your pocketbook and for the planet. And if your roof is not suitable for solar panels, LES allows you to buy a share of a virtual solar panel on their 5 megawatt solar array that's located just west of Lincoln. And you can still save on your monthly energy bill as if that solar panel was on your roof. That's called their virtual net metering program. It's pretty kind of wonky name, but that's what it's about. You get to buy a share of solar panel located at the community solar array. And then here are several other programs that you can explore if they may be appealing to you. Okay, let's move to our next topic. I see some questions coming into the chat. Thank you so much. I will respond to all of those at the end. So let's talk about transportation. As you saw, transportation is the second biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions for our community. And I feel that it is actually kind of the toughest nut to crack because, you know, we have 300,000 residents driving their own vehicles around town, and the city can't control that, right? We don't have a lot of control over what individual choices people make. But we can incentivize people to choose lower emissions vehicles. So, but we do control, of course, our StarTran fleet, and 2/3 of our bus fleet is already powered by alternative fuels, meaning 1/3 of them are electric and 1/3 of them are running on compressed natural gas. We are looking at the possibility of converting one of our fuel stations, our compressed natural gas stations, to a renewable natural gas station. So more to come on that. StarTran is a great resource for us, but we're limited in how much we can grow StarTran because of this, the size of our population and the amount of federal funding that we qualify for. StarTran is a heavily regulated entity with the federal government. and there are just some structural limitations there. So we're always kind of talking about innovations that we can find. There's no doubt, denying that Lincoln is, for the most part, a car driving community. And so for Lincoln, electric vehicles may be the most pragmatic solution to reduce our vehicle emissions. Right now, only about 1% of cars in Lincoln are plug-in electric vehicles. We do expect that to grow. We were expecting it to grow a little more quickly until the change in administration and the change in vehicle emission standards and so on happened. So we're definitely aware that the growth of electric vehicles seems to be slowing in the United States, but it is accelerating in places like China and Europe. So we'll just see how that continues to go. There is also, I run into the expectation or the assumption a lot that EVs are only for wealthy people, because a lot of people just think about Teslas and $60,000, vehicles when they think of EVs. But this red one on the picture is actually, that's the same as my car. It's a Chevy Bolt, and it's a very affordable, compact car that's made to be sort of an entry-level model. And I love that car. And there are also a lot of used cars on the marketplace right now. So it is becoming more feasible for people of all income levels to drive an electric vehicle. And then there, of course, the hybrid market is also growing, whether those plug-in hybrids or the other kind of hybrids are also really great options. People generally love to drive electric vehicles. They're really zippy and fast and fun to drive. So we're watching that transition, and right now we are working on a plan to place more electric vehicle chargers across town. We've formed a partnership with Lincoln Public Schools, and we're working on a plan to place 17 or so charging stations if we can get some grant funding that will be coming up from the Nebraska Department of Transportation. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to move forward on that, and that the more people see EV charging stations around town, the more they might be willing to invest in an electric vehicle. So in terms of our heavy fleet, we do have a goal to transition all of our fleet to 100% alternatively fueled by 2040. Already 40% of our light fleet is alternatively fueled, which includes electric vehicles, hybrids, and compressed natural gas vehicles. And in our heavy duty fleet, we're working on switching out regular diesel fuel with biodiesel wherever we can. And here are a few other things we're working on in terms of clean transportation. EV charging stations, as I mentioned. We are working on building a multimodal transportation center that'll be at the corner of 10th and F Streets. This has been in the news and on our website if you'd like to know more about that, but it's basically going to be our new sort of state-of-the-art bus station and transit hub. We also have an incredible amount of bike trails here in Lincoln, 183 miles and counting. And so biking is an awesome transportation option here in a way that it's not available in a lot of communities. We're really lucky to have that. And we do have our scooter and bike share programs as well. So if you haven't tried an electric vehicle or an e-bike or a scooter yet, I hope you will get the chance. LES does hold an EV ride and drive event either every year or every other year, which is a great place to test drive an electric vehicle. And so maybe one day you'll be able to swap out one of your driving trips with one of these emissions-free options. And if you are in the market for a new car, make sure to check out the electric and hybrid options, including the used options. They are really fun to drive. And so, returning back to this mythical concert in the year 2050, let's go back to that laughter and that sense that we made it. It's 2050, the climate has changed, but we're resilient, we've adapted. To get to that point, we have got some real work to do. We know that the road ahead won't be easy. We are living through some real challenges with environmental rollbacks, shrinking funding. There's a lot of uncertainty about the future. But that's exactly why local action matters more than ever before. We know that our community wants clean air, clean water, and green, healthy neighborhoods. And those are some things that we can influence right here at home. So when I picture the future, I can see it pretty clearly. I can see neighbors biking to our new transit hub. I can see kids growing up in affordable, energy efficient homes. I can see businesses running on clean power and hiring workers in green jobs that we have helped to train. And that's honestly what gives me hope, that the future isn't just something that happens to us passively, it's something we build together. And step by step, decision by decision, I know that we can work together to build a community that is sustainable, connected, and ready for whatever comes next. So you have an important role to play in achieving Lincoln's climate smart future. I hope that I've given you a few ideas of ways that you can choose more sustainable actions in your own life, whether that's growing some of your own food or purchasing some locally grown food, making sure that you have an emergency kit to get you through power outages that may come. You might be able to get a rebate on a smart thermostat for your home. You might want to buy a virtual solar panel. You could take the bus. You could buy an electric car. And you could also, if you don't already, get to know your neighbors, because it's actually been shown that the most important strategy for making a resilient community is to have strong social connections. So if people know someone they can call to borrow a chainsaw or to spend the night on someone's couch when their power has gone out, they're going to be more resilient and able to get back on their feet more quickly. So to learn more about what we're doing, please go to our website. You can see the link there. And with that, I would be happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Kim. Very informative and thorough. We have some questions that have come in from Clay Nath. When you say Lincoln, do you mean the city of Lincoln, not including private residents and businesses emissions?
No, I mean the community of Lincoln. If you're talking about our greenhouse gas emissions goal, it is a community-wide goal. So it's wider than just municipal government.
Okay, thank you. And then for Marv Almy, how will the closing of the Tyson beef plant in Lexington complicate the ability to source beef from Nebraska?
Well, I don't know too much about where that plant actually sold their beef. My understanding is that a lot of our meatpacking plants sell beef internationally. So I don't know if, like usually when we're talking about local food, we're talking about smaller organizations of smaller producers, family ranches, that kind of thing, that are working in the local food market. And I think that plant was, a commercial food production facility. So it's probably not going to impact our local efforts here.
And from Colby Woodson, has there recently or will there soon be the addition of emitting power generation to the LES power generation pie? And if so, what was or is the type?
I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, LES announced a few months ago that yes, they are needing to invest in some new natural gas turbines in order to meet the requirements of the Southwest Power Pool. And those requirements have gotten more strict in the last year or so because of extreme weather events. They're trying to ensure that everyone, the Southwest Power Pool is the regional sort of electric association that governs parts of 13 states in our area. And they set the rules for how our grid needs to operate. And what they have, if you remember, I think it was 2021 was a winter storm Uri. It was a really intense winter storm that hit Texas particularly hard. And what they learned through that experience is that we didn't have the grid didn't have enough resource adequacy, it's called. They needed like more margins to be able to provide all the electricity that is needed in our whole 13 state region when we have power outages in one area. And so to make a long story short, LES did a lot of analysis and determined that they needed to add generating resources here, and that because of available technologies and budgeting and pricing and so on, that it had to be 2 new natural gas turbines. So it was kind of an unfortunate, well, it was an unfortunate development. No one, I think, wanted to see more fossil fuel generation going in, but it ended up just being required for the exigencies of the situation.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. From Jean McGuire, how can the city and city council help homeowners who live in homeowner associations who do not allow solar panels?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I have gotten that question before, and it's really so frustrating that there are some HOAs that have regulations that they don't allow solar panels. I know this was a bill that came up in the legislature in the last session that did not pass. I would hope that whoever sponsored that will continue to reintroduce it and try to get it passed statewide. When you ask how the city and city council can help homeowners, I think that's tough because the HOAs, they're obviously their own organizations and they are entitled to make their rules. So I guess the only way to stop that would be for the city to pass a superseding city law. So it's worth a conversation perhaps with some city council members. I don't know what their familiarity with the issue is or what their appetite would be for passing new legislation that would limit the ability of those HOAs to set their own rules.
Thanks, Kim. And from Alex Knight, do the guidelines for the urban gardens allow for groups to sell garden produce together? For example, community gardens or neighbors working together to grow, but then sell at one location?
Yes, a community garden where it's like one piece of land where multiple people are farming it at the same or gardening it at the same time. Yes, they could have a sale on their property. If it were a group of neighbors that were all growing in separate places and then combining, that is technically not allowed. It has to be sold on the property in which it was grown.
Is that a zoning limitation?
Yes.
Okay. From Terry Hendrickson, what type of licensing is required to sell or share food grown or created locally?
There is no licensing required. That's one of the reasons we were kind of excited about this. We do recommend that people do a soil test on their property to make sure that they don't have any contaminants in their soil. But otherwise, there's no licensing needed.
Great. And for Margaret Vrana, I understand that ethanol actually costs more than regular gas because of the commercial corn or soybeans, both adding to water and soil pollution. What are your thoughts on ethanol?
Because of the commercial corn or soybeans. Yes, ethanol is a tricky subject. I don't know a lot. I don't know a lot about it because it's not something I work on directly. I'd like to know more. I will be going to a renewable fuels summit at the university in February where I hope to learn more. I know that there are a lot of concerns about ethanol because we ideally don't want all of our farmland converted to commercial agriculture to grow corn for oil or for fuel, and yet at the same time there is a lower life cycle greenhouse gas emissions profile from ethanol than from gasoline. So I think it's trying to thread that needle of finding the right kind of environmental benefit.
Thank you. And from Linda Brown, What is the process for updating or creating a new city climate action plan going forward?
Yes, great question. Our climate action plan is a 6-year plan that is intended to sunset in 2027. And so what we are planning to do is to update it next year, to work on updating it next year, and then have it ready to release to the public in 2027. We're going to be doing an internal process to update that. We haven't planned out what our process is going to be exactly yet. We would like to do some community engagement. Happy to talk with all of you and get your ideas and suggestions for how you think we should go about updating our climate action plan or what priorities you would like to see there.
And Kim, what challenges or barriers have you experienced over the course of the first 4 years of the climate action plan?
Let's see. Well, I would say, first of all, that I've been really gratified to see how many people at the City of Lincoln support sustainability and want to advance all of these issues. So I just want to say that I've experienced few roadblocks internally. I think one of the biggest challenge we've had was the change in the federal administration this year. We missed out on some funding opportunities. We had, hoped to move forward in some really powerful ways with the Inflation Reduction Act and all the funding that was available there. And so the scrambling of that kind of forward momentum really made us kind of stop and have to recalibrate. And I think another challenge that I've found has been trying to figure out how best to communicate with the public, especially on behavior change kinds of initiatives that we would like to see. We don't exactly have a marketing firm at our disposal, and so it's been a little bit challenging to try to figure out how we can reach residents most effectively. I see Clay's question in the chat. I'm happy to respond to that, Judy, if you like.
Please.
Clay said he's skeptical of the local food initiative as being anything more than a goodwill gesture. Could we only eat just celery and strawberries? Thanks for that question, Clay. That is a good question, and that's what I used to think or wonder about as well. And I want to make it clear that we are not suggesting that people survive year-round on tomatoes and cantaloupe or whatever grows here in our region. We're not suggesting that our local food could ever supplant what we get from national and international sources. The idea is just to diversify the food supply more so that we are welcoming more locally grown food, that we are making a market case for growing fresh and nutritious food here locally, like we did, 100 years ago or so in this area and further back, of course. And you would be surprised at the diversity of local foods that are available. Lone Tree Foods is the distributor that we worked with, and I would encourage you to go to their website and just take a look at some of the variety of local foods. It's not just produce, it's also bread, honey, meats, dairy, not canned goods, but jarred goods, all kinds of things are produced locally. So we're just trying to welcome more diversity. We have a very low starting from. So if we can just get the needle to move a little bit, that would be a success.
We have another question, which is, can the city allow solar panels on apartment balconies as in Utah?
Yes, I've been reading articles about that. It's a great idea. So I'm actually not sure that they're not allowed on balconies. I'd have to confirm that currently. I think it would just be a thing for LES to look into, LES and the city, and determine if the juice is really worth the squeeze there, like how much power could be generated in our region through balconies, and how much interest is there on the part of the public. would it really be an impactful change to make versus some of the other initiatives that we could lean into, or zoning changes that we could lean into.
And a comment from Alex Knight, food sharing also builds neighborhoods. We are working on a pilot project partnering gardeners with an elderly neighbor to build support and connection among neighbors.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. That's exactly the kind of joy and community connection that can come out of growing food together.
What impact did the recently released state climate change report have on your work, Kim?
There was a really impactful piece of that. We got a sub-grant from the state for the first part of that planning effort, which allowed us to create what they called a priority climate action plan. And through that project, we were able to get a lot of in-depth analysis done on our greenhouse gas emissions profile and on the impact that 10 different strategies would have if we added a whole lot more solar, for example, or if we really increase energy efficiency in our community. And that was a really valuable project. And then the plan that they put out, it was connected with one of the largest grants the state ever got from the federal government. They got a $300 million grant to implement the initiatives they put in that climate action plan, which was really a huge win for Nebraska. And some of that money has been set aside for non-residential solar, and the money is not flowing yet, but I'm hoping that sometime next year there will be funding available to residents to help them put solar, or cities to help put solar on parking garages, for example, or municipal buildings. It could provide some funding to help us really grow our solar resources.
We've got a question from Deb and Mark Nicholson. Does the city have a fund that can accept personal contributions for moving forward on the transition to clean energy? What can residents do to address that?
That's a great question, Deb. Thank you for raising that. My colleague Nandita and I are having a lot of conversations about climate finance and what are the different ways that, could we potentially set up a green revolving fund kind of thing to help fund more sustainability work. So we're analyzing that, we're looking at it, and potentially part of that could be setting up a public fund that people could contribute toward. So yeah, thank you for raising the question.
We are getting toward the end of our hour. Paula, do you have wrap-up questions? Kim, thank you so much for all of your information today. Paula?
Yes, just a couple of announcements. First of all, we will not have a lunch and learn in January because of the New Year's holiday. Our next lunch and learn will be on February 5th. And our speaker will be Zachary Hamilton. He is a UNO professor in the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice, and he will speak on identifying and forecasting sources of jail crowding. So we hope that many of you will be able to join us for that next lunch and learn. And just as a reminder, if you are inspired to make a difference in our democracy, consider joining our Lincoln and Lancaster County League. If you are not already a member, please visit our website, lincolnleague.org. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you very much, Kim, for an excellent presentation, and from Judy for monitoring and helping us with the chat questions. So
I want to make one last comment. Paula, Kim put in the chat, please feel free to contact me with questions, and she gave us her email. So thanks for that, Kim.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to talk with you all. And thanks for all your great questions.
Okay. All right.